Resolution, Joint Resolution 77, right? Opposing the president's action to get our troops out of that war in Syria. You voted for it. I don't understand why.
Well, it's really more focused on what is the end game with containing ISIS. We've got ISIS, and President Trump's been very aggressive at taking the fight to ISIS with a coalition of countries, but also working with the Kurds to finally get ISIS at bay. We know that there are thousands, maybe as many as 7,000 plus, in addition to their family, who are being held in prisons. We want to make sure that they don't get released from those prisons. There are reports of jailbreaks of those ISIS terrorists.
And
we talked to the president. Well, we talked to the president at the meeting, actually, about that. That was one of the topics that we talked about. Pelosi stormed out before we could get into the details of it. But ultimately, after she left, we did. And again, there were still some Democrats in the room where the president laid out what his plan is right now to make sure that we can contain those terrorists, because we don't want them to run loose.
I want to understand this, Congressman. I really do. 94% of Republicans in poll after poll support the President of the United States. The people who voted for him in 2016 voted for him with this promise on the table, that he was going to get our troops out of wars in which they did not belong, out of international police actions, precisely the description of, I think, northern Syria. Isn't it time to start following this president? I mean, I don't understand it. The Republicans, I would think you guys would say, you know, Nancy Pelosi is for it. I sure as hell better be against it.
Well, there's a lot of things she's for that we have been fighting, including standing up to Iran, which this president's doing, reversing that bad Iran deal. Pelosi was for that Iran deal. We, of course, opposed it. I stand with President Trump in what he's doing there, what he's doing to China, what he's doing, by the way, to stand up to Russia. When President Obama would not sell those Javelin missiles to the Ukraine, our friends that wanted to stop Russian aggression, Obama wouldn't sell them the missiles. Trump did. When President Trump got elected, he sold those missiles right away so that they can push back on Russian aggression. That was mentioned in the Zelensky phone call. So this president has stood up to Russia. He stood up to all the bad actors of the world, from North Korea to China to Iran. And I think it's one of the reasons why his foreign policy doesn't get a lot of credit. Look at what he's doing in Israel, standing up to our ally there, too. So Pelosi can have the socialist debate on the left, and you're seeing it in the presidential debate. You're going to see next year a real debate between freedom versus socialism, and it's playing itself out. But the voters should decide that next year, not Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff behind closed doors like they're trying to do with this impeachment witch hunt. It's a hoax.
Do you think the voters, Congressman, are going to ask of Congressman running for re-election, what did you do for the president at the moment in which he needed the greatest support, that he needed people standing shoulder to shoulder with him instead of voting with the damn Democrats on a resolution that, by the way, let's put this up. The American people, Republicans in the most recent survey, by 57% approve of that troop withdrawal, Congressman. And you just went against 57% of the folks in that poll. You went against the president, who's been right on issue after issue, as you've just itemized, issue after issue in which he's been correct. How in the world can you comfortably line up with Lindsey Graham, who was, by the way, remember, he wanted to work for President Obama along with Senator McCain in Cairo to put in and to urge President Sisi to put the Muslim Brotherhood, for crying out loud, in the new Egyptian government. This is not a man who has great skill and a great record in foreign policy.
Well, and I wasn't for that. And like I said, we were at the White House today to talk through some of those issues and, frankly, to come to agreement on things like imposing tougher sanctions on Turkey, which we're in agreement on. In fact, that was one of the items that the president talked with us about, those of us that remained, at least, in the meeting. And again, the rest of the meeting was very productive once Speaker Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Steny Hoyer stormed out. And there were still some Democrats remaining. But ultimately, you've got a president who has done, I think, yeoman's work at standing up to the really bad actors around the world. It would be nice if we had some of our friends around the world helping more in that effort. At least some of our NATO allies are stepping up more, but there's a lot more they can do. And ultimately, we're going to keep fighting and making sure that they don't try to impeach a president with no high crimes and misdemeanors, absolutely nothing that they've laid out. They just don't agree with the results of the election. That's where ultimately people have to stand with the president, and we're fighting that battle as we speak.
I would hope that his own conference in the House of Representatives would stand with him.
You'll see
Imagine,
a strong,
Congressman, how much
support
more that
behind the
would
president.
strengthen him around the world as he conducts the most successful foreign policy in 3 decades, certainly. Congressman Steve Scalise, great to see you, and